Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another round of the Radical Esports Cup in Season 4 of 2025. We come to Zandvoort, at the end of which we'll be at the halfway point in our season. Round 6, live, of course, on the RaceSpotTV and iRacing YouTube channels and Twitch. Here tonight, I'm Ian O'Leary, alongside Ron Mounds, back in the commentary booth with Romero Augustin Cisneros behind the cameras, as always. Good to be back alongside you, Ron. This circuit is difficult to overtake in Formula 1 and other categories around the world. I'm hoping, though, for these Radicals, where overtaking is generally a bit easier, this circuit is just the right side of tricky to overtake. Tonight will tell, of course, but generally on these more difficult circuits, the Radicals still provide great action.
Yeah, we've seen that up to this point in the championship here in Season 4. Those tracks where it's not a total draft fest, you have to put in a bit more effort to it. You can really see some absolutely amazing action. And on a brief little stretch of F1 tracks at the moment, Portimao last time at Zandvoort, of course, here today. This track has those long flat-out blasts, especially heading down to turn number 1 and the chicane on the back end of the circuit. Going to be some good overtaking opportunities allotted to these racers here as we round off the first half of what's already been a very good season.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at the championship standings and where we are at the moment in Season 4. Andreas Friedrich has got out to a very big lead, but you'll remember last season that James Barry got out to a very big lead and then didn't win the title, so be wary of that gap. It currently stands at 192 points. Heinz Braun is second in that 192 points pack and only 9 points further back, Peter Eveny. Then it is Havok Gullikson, bit of a gap back to him. He's 6 points only in front of Sodi Rutten and only 10 back to Paki Caruso. And then 101 back to George Gonzaga. Andre Castro hasn't done too many rounds this season. He's on 508 ahead of James Barry, round 500. And Lucas Vieira on 495 to round out the top 10. And rather excitingly, for this final season of 2025, we've got some RaceSpotTV broadcasted races standings as well. The point system, by the way, 25, 20, 16, 13, 10 for the top 5, and then the F1 point system below that. Andre Castro with 2 wins and 1 second place leads ahead of Andreas Friedrich by 9 points. Then Havok Gullikson another few points further behind him. Heinz Braun wasn't there last week, but has picked up points in all the other rounds so far. He's 4th ahead of Peter Eveny, Sodi Rutten, who are tied. James Barry just 1 point behind them. Guillaume Perrens, Paki Caruso and Rafa Blanco round out the top 10. The last 2 haven't been here for 2 weeks in a row. Sorry, the last 3 of those haven't been here for 2 weeks in a row. Hence the changing number of or the changing cast of drivers we have in this series, of course, week in, week out. 20 past 2 in Sim, 21 degrees Celsius, down on the racetrack only. That is fine as far as track temperature goes, in fact quite low really, but that is good news for these competitors here in qualifying. In terms of those standings, Ron, I think it's fair to say that Andre Castro's been having the best season, but you know, in terms of both standings, that is. But the key thing remains that he's not actually been here every time, or indeed most times, which has made things rather difficult for him to be up there in either our standings or the official ones.
Yeah, and you know, it's a similar situation to what we've seen on another race spot series, that being the Porsche Club of America in the Challenge class. Had a driver score their second win in 2 races. We're already 4 rounds into that championship. They just don't show up too much. They go out and try and win the races that they're a part of, but they're not really contending for the championship. Andre Castro, on the other hand, he is the reigning champion here in the Radical Esports Cup. Won it in Season 3. Wants to try and get it done here in Season 4. And if he can be a bit more consistent, show up a little bit more, I have no doubt that he is going to be a driver up towards the top. Has something to prove as well. In the past, usually just showed up to the races for shots and goggles, tried to have a little bit of fun. He's kind of cranked up the wick as we've gone throughout 2025, contending for those championships. Signed recently with an esports team, so he is really looking to try and contend. So keep an eye on Andre Castro as we round off the first half of the season here today to try and go for his 3rd win and 2nd in a row.
Ole Gullikson was 9th last week in his first appearance in the top 10 in one of our broadcasted races here at 2100 GMT. And I should say, by the way, with European and American clock changes coming up very, very soon, you need to be wary that this broadcast probably will change time in your time zone because the iRacing sessions do not change with the clocks. They're on universal time, but a lot of people may in this listening to this broadcast at the moment may live in countries where the clocks are going to change in the next 2 weeks. So be wary when we come back next Friday that this broadcast may be happening an hour earlier or later or whatever in your time zone, if indeed your clocks are about to change. So do be wary of that as we go forward in this confusing time of the year. Dennis Kyriakopoulos is coming up towards the line at the moment, just over a half second behind Havik Gullikson, who's currently on pole, and he's not going to get any closer with a 29.5. He will stay in 8th position for the moment. And it's Gullikson's session as things stand. Andreas Friedrich not far behind him, though. And here's Andre Castro, over half a second behind at the moment, looking for a good lap here to take pole in the dying seconds of qualifying.
Yes, as we see him heading off through the top end of the circuit right now, this tight and twisty mid-sector is a bit of a handful in these SR10s. Gotta see these racers sawing at the wheel from the start of this race all the way through to the very end, even in qualifying though. Gotta see these racers having a pull at the steering wheel. That's one thing to raise about this series. 2 laps allotted to these competitors in these solo qualifying sessions, and how much does it usually take for these SR10s to actually get into a groove and get those tires up to temp? Usually about 2 to 3 laps. So these racers on the ragged edge of control as they try and get the maximum speed that they can.
Absolutely. This is Castro through that difficult S section there at turns 11 and 12. Right in front of those big grandstands, populated, of course, in the F1 races, and before he gets to the final 2 corners, the session will end, and he will be in the midfield. Maybe for the first time in one of these races, we'll see him not on the podium, but do not rule that out with his speed. Havik Gullikson is on pole in front of Andreas Friedrich by 68 thousandths of a second, with teammate Sebastian Lipp in 3rd. Peter Ivany is in 4th, ahead of Kjell Larsen and Lasse Sorensen, teammates sharing row 3 for IGL Coatings. 7th place is James Barry and Dennis Kyriakopoulos, teammates of course, but this time for the Inner E Racing team. Jarrett Dunkovic and Andre Castro round out the top 10, with Alan Rasmussen and Heinz Brunn then on row 6. George Gonzaga, Ole Gullikson, Chris Wetz round out the 15 drivers who set times in this session here tonight. Drivers will rev their engines on the circuit for a little while, but it's a smaller grid than normal, but same quality as always, Ron, we've got to look forward to tonight.
An absolutely stacked grid of racers, seeing some usual names out there on the circuit here tonight. It may be a smaller grid, but we've also got a smaller run heading down into turn number 1 that may make the start of this race have a bit more importance in weeks past. This is going to be a very interesting start to see who can negotiate the cleanest.
Everybody onto the grid just now as the mid-afternoon sunshine starts to dip a little bit. We are almost ready to go from Zandvoort as we hit the halfway mark in the Radical Esports Cup here in this season. After this race, we are underway in the Netherlands, and it is a decent start from the pole sitter who gets away well there. Gullikson in towards turn number 1 will hold the lead in front of Friedrich. In fact, the top 3 single file completely as Andreas Friedrich continues in behind, as does his teammate James Barry, who's in front of Peter Ivany, coming through the first sector in a very calm start on the opening lap.
As they head their way off through turn number 3, this is such an inviting spot to try and make a move stick, but can also end so poorly so quickly. Let's see how everybody tackles it as they head their way up the tight and twisties, down this flat out blast, and cressing their way over the hill down into turn number 7. Great start for Gullikson. He won at the race at Belle Isle, which is probably the most challenging race that we've had in quite some time here in the series, as we take a look at a round of bumper cars that went on a little bit further behind Dennis Kyriakopoulos at the epicenter of all of it.
Alan Rasmussen also slowed by that. He went down to 14th place. It was very close with Andre Castro as well in the number 1 car, and he's trying to make up some places. Watch him come into view there alongside James Barry as they came in towards turn 10, I think this is. Yeah, it is indeed. Through turn 10 and now over the slight rise in the road and down in towards the chicane itself. Not a very hilly country, famously, Netherlands, but this is in some sand dunes, and so you do see a little bit of elevation change around Zandvoort. Gives this circuit its character, and at the moment Castro is just in behind Barry, still can't find his way through. 2 drivers you'd expect to see a bit further up in the field, actually, in a field like this.
Yeah, that's going to add to the challenge of this race, with those top running competitors trying to side their way through, cut their way through the field like a hot knife through butter. I said right towards the start of this show how there are a decent amount of overtaking opportunities, notably turn number 1, as that was Jared Dunkovic flying off the track into the gravel trap.
Straight on and straight back on again, or straight off and straight back on again, I should say, as he brings a lot of gravel onto the circuit for everybody to enjoy next time around. He luckily avoids the wall and only drops to 13th, but that must have been contact as he was side by side. He was low down in the top 10, but it must have been contact. There was somebody, oh no, he's just misjudged that himself, hasn't he? Just gone straight on, completely on his own there. First time, of course, reaching turn 1 at full speed in the race.
And that's a problem with the brakes in these SR10s. These cars absolutely fantastic. They put on wonderful racing, and these cars have a soft spot in my heart considering I've been commentating on them for as long as I have. But the brakes on these are, how can I put it? Inefficient at their job. You either just fly off the road in the case of Jared Dunkovic, or if he applied probably about 10% more brake pressure, he probably would have flown off the racetrack, all 4 tires locked up, screeching off the road, as that was a small little lockup. And look from Heinz Braun as he headed his way off through turn number 7. The brakes in these Radical SR10s, there's such a molecularly thin line between actually pulling up to the corner just fine or locking up and missing the turn by a country mile. And this track, even though it does have those F1 modifications with far more asphalt runoff area than they had a matter of a couple of years ago, it's still an old school track, so you got that gravel, and that gravel not going to work well as you try and tackle this very tight, twisty, and technical racetrack.
Yeah. It's still punishing. I'm glad that Formula 1 hasn't made so many changes to it that it's, you know, lost its character in that sense. Just still punish errors, which is exactly what you want to see. No changes inside the top 7, but we might be about to see one. Larson very close to Peter Evenly on the way towards turn 7 here, and he's not going to get down the inside this time round. We'll see whether and if he can get through though, because I get the feeling that the front 3 are breaking away as a result. Not one of those draft tracks that we sometimes see in the Radicals where everybody stays very, very close together as a result of the draft and whatever. You know, even circuits like Imola, to be honest, serve that kind of purpose in these cars sometimes. But it is not impossible to overtake, as you see in some of the bigger cars around here, which is going to be good for us tonight.
You know, the way that I can describe this racetrack is it has enough drafting whereby these racers can stay close together, but not so much drafting where it's going to be just a glorified NASCAR super speedway race. We see it at the likes of Spa, we see it at the likes of many other racetracks, in fact, that we have run at in the past here in these SR10s. This racetrack, it's got that challenge that we love. Always want to test these drivers and keep them on the ball, but at the same time, you got enough drafting whereby you can't really break away either. It's that perfect blend. We saw a lot of it throughout Season 3, and we've already seen a decent amount of it here through Season 4. These racetracks are a good, happy mediator between heavy drafters and real challenge, usually put on some of the best racing, and even though these racers are just keeping it clean at the moment and trying to pick off the spots whenever they can, I feel like it's only going to be a matter of time before these competitors really start throwing haymakers at each other.
The only driver who's not keeping it clean so far, unfortunately, is Jared Dunkovic, who's gone off again here, and he's nearly 20 seconds now off of the race lead of Havik Gullikson. Not that that's much of a concern, but the fact he's so far away from everybody else is, well, telling for his race, unfortunately. Alan Rasmussen also losing a few seconds compared to those around him. This is what happened to Dunkovic, though, in towards turn number 1. It's turn 1 again, getting it stopped in time, but slides the whole way through the corner, and he does make contact with Rasmussen, who is now losing time as a result of that front end damage picked up there.
Real tough break to run into difficulties like that at the very start, but that's what you get running a little bit farther behind. You can find yourself in those situations very, very easily, and doubly so with the nature of this track can lend itself to having moments like that. Just small little stacking up, drivers having a small trip up right in front, and nothing that he could really do but just center punch the back of that car right in front of you. Tough start for Dunkovic, side-by-side racing between the two inert teammates at Sebastian Lipp, jumping in front of Andres Friedrich. Yet to see Sebastian Lipp really contend for a race win here in this series. I think the last time that we saw him win was back in Season 3, so hasn't been able to visit victory lane thus far in Season 4, but always a top running racer, part of that nerd team, which is an absolute powerhouse in these Radical official races, really just in the SR10s period. So look at Sebastian Lipp to maybe mount a charge to Gullikson, but if these two start to chase each other's tails a little bit too much, Ard Gullikson is going to thank them for the opportunity to drive away.
Yeah, the only top 10 Sebastian Lipp has had this season so far in Season 4 was an 8th place finish at Imola, third round of the season. So not a successful season so far for Sebastian Lipp, and indeed his brother Christoph Lipp hasn't joined us too often this season, which has been a little bit of a shame. I hope to see a little bit more of him a little bit later on in the season. The last 2 weeks he has been hit, but those were his first appearances, and unfortunately no top fives in those appearances either, which is a bit unusual by his standards. Of course, come back next week on Sunday to find out how he does in the last round of the European Radical Sim Racing European Championship, which draws to a close on the 2nd of November, postponed by a week because of the Formula 1 race. We will be going racing again one last time this season. I believe it will be at Zandvoort nevertheless. Normally it's at the round of the official race, so it might be at Zandvoort, might change to Mid-Ohio quite late in the day, but let's wait and see on that. As Heinz Braun's recovery to the top 10's complete, he goes around the outside of Chris Wetz into 10th place.
And Ole Gullikson, I thought, was going to go for a dive off into turn number 1 in that number 15 car to try and jump his way up into 11th. Not able to get that move done. But we often see this with Heinz Braun. Ever the defensive driver, he's usually a bit more on the offensive side of things, going for the moves, really being aggressive. But we have seen Heinz Braun put on some defensive masterclasses over time. Certainly not the spot that he would want to run in, maybe not getting into the right groove of this racetrack. I gotta say, though, we have got an absolutely packed split of drivers. I mean, you look through Vard Gullikson, he's a past champion. Sebastian Lipp may not be a past champion in these cars, but he is very, very quick. His brother Christoph was actually the 2024 Radical World Finals champion. Andreas Friedrich, series veteran. Oh, that's a big moment from Braun as he heads his way off through the hairpin. Thankfully for him, not going to lose out on that spot to Chris Wetz, but just to wrap up on that point before this battle really starts to flare up, all the races that we have gotten this series have either been around the block for many, many moons here in these Radical SR10s, or they're past champions. Sometimes, in fact, both. So, Heinz Braun running in P10 really just speaks volumes about the talent pool that we've gotten this race here tonight.
Absolutely. There are the interval gaps, by the way. There are not very many big gaps through the field, that's for sure, as Braun feels the need to defend. It's single file all the way through in towards turn 1, but notice how Sebastian Lipp has been able to get a little bit closer to Havard Gullikson here. He's bringing Andreas Friedrich with him, by the way, but Havard Gullikson leading this race, likes to flag so far. First third of this race complete, but this is the most serious pressure he's come under. Friedrich didn't put him under the pressure that Sebastian Lipp is now putting him under by closing in and potentially opening this race up to a race-leading battle in the middle third.
As we continue to see this battle start to shift up at the front of the field, if Vard Gullikson can find an extra gear in the next 11 laps and drive off into the sunset, that's going to do him many favors. It'll put him in the same bracket as Andre Castro, multi-time race winners here in Season 4, at least in these 2100 GMT broadcasted races here on RaceSpotTV. And in terms of our RaceSpotTV point standings, that also help him out a quite big amount as well. I mean, he can run this a bit more thoroughly, Ewan, since you're the one that came up with the points format that we have. But Castro would be fixing to gain, won't that be about 21 points if he does bring it home over Castro? That would be a huge swing in our little RaceSpotTV point standings.
Yeah, we'll try and focus in a little bit more on this as we get through this season. But you're right, Castro would only gain 4 from an 8th place finish as per the Formula 1 system. Gullikson 25. And he would move ahead of Friedrich as well, whether Friedrich finishes 2nd or 3rd. So Gullikson would start to lead the standings. Friedrich would, I think, jump to 2nd just ahead of Castro, who would drop to 3rd. But I think we are starting to see a top 3 really emerge in these races, and hopefully they do appear in all the races this season. As I mentioned, we'll start to become an hour earlier for a lot of the Europeans now. As Chris Wetz goes for a big spin, and he's lucky that he doesn't find either barrier there. He's down to 13th, but that is a lot better than it could have been through that tight section of corners.
Yeah, all he had as he headed his way off through Ari Line Dyke Corner, the final turn around this racetrack, was a slight scrape into that inside Armco. That is an absolute miracle, the fact he walked away with that without any major damage. Still down P13, probably has a brand new fire suit being shipped to him after this race, considering that moment all through the final corner. But Wetz very lucky to get away with one there. Kind of on the subject of that final corner, funnily enough, bringing up some IndyCar fun facts here. Very interesting that turn, Arie Luyendyk corner, named after the two-time Indy 500 winner himself, Arie Luyendyk. That turn and its reconfiguration when Formula One decided to return here a couple of years ago got the exact same banking that Indianapolis has. I think it's actually a little bit higher banked than Indy, but just a tiny bit more.
Seems about right, doesn't it? Seems about equal. As a slightly defensive line from Lasse Sorensen in towards turn 1 this time. James Barry so far unable to find his way through in a circuit that has proven to be a little bit difficult in terms of overtaking. Maybe a bit more than we'd expect, but Barry is certainly trying to prove that wrong at the moment. And Friedrich the same with Lip, and Larson the same with Evenyik. So there are a couple of battles to be hopeful for at the moment. But just behind these two, notice Andre Castro running on his own. 8th place at the moment for the driver of number 1. We see him so strong so often, but I wonder whether this is a circuit that he's just not getting on with.
That's an interesting point to raise there, Yoon. You know, these drivers always have their own little specialties in terms of what racetracks they prefer, which ones that they don't. Zandvoort, a track really unique, has a decent amount of elevation change in many parts, but many other turns around here, a bit on the flat end and certainly on the blind end as well. There's turns around this racetrack that I love personally. There's other turns around this racetrack that I despise with a burning passion and wish would just get thrown away and be replaced with literally everything else. Turn 10 that we just saw Andre Castro head off through the other turn, heading onto that back flat out place before the Hanser chicane. I can never get that turn for the correct for the life of me. I've never been able to nail that turn down. I don't know what it is, whether there's something in the air or I just can't drive, both of which could very much be accurate. But this racetrack, you do need a certain level of finesse to really get around it at speed.
Yeah, that definitely is. Even more so to make an overtake, as we're seeing as well here with James Barry, Lasse Sorensen. You may think, by the way, when they're running this banked turn 3, even more banked than it used to be, by the way, this corner, as his final turn, you may think, why don't they just dive to the inside? But that's when a bit of oval racing knowledge comes in, and you've got to remember that while it's not only the first part of the corner, the middle of the corner that you're looking at, but also the exit of the corner, and generally running on the top, as it is in oval racing, is good for the exit of the corner. And remember, of course, Ron, that actually the next braking zone, if you're going to call turn 7 the next braking zone, is actually a lot further away from the previous corner than it generally is on an oval. So it's even more advantageous to run on the outside line. It's a shame in some ways that it does stifle overtaking a little bit through there.
Yeah, I think just the spectacle of seeing those drivers run through there is just unique enough on its own. Interesting. I do know the story about why they added in that banking. I mean, it was banked to start off with, as you alluded to a few moments ago, Yoon, but they increased it a heck of a lot. It was originally banked heading off through there just to give a bit more room inside the paddock space, because it is a little bit condensed heading off through there. This track used to be massive. If anyone's ever seen the old version of Zandvoort put over the newer one, and when I say old, I mean way back in the day, back when Formula One originally raced here, back in the 60s and 70s, and I think very early on in the 80s, to test my F1 knowledge there. This track is a lot smaller than it used to be, a lot more condensed, but the pit lane has always been the exact same place. They originally added in that banking just to give a bit more room inside the paddock space so you could actually go into the rest of the infield of the racetrack. And as we are talking about history, I do want to correct myself. You know, I said a little bit earlier on that the final turn banking here at Zandvoort is exactly the same to the banking at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I lied. It's actually double the banking here at Zandvoort. So someone who purports himself as knowing a heck of a lot about IndyCar, I will revoke that status from me and swiftly zip my lips.
It's quite steep, isn't it? You know, I can't say I'm a massive fan of the changes they made to this circuit all the way back. It must have been quite a few years ago now, actually, when they were trying to attract Formula One again, and they were successful in doing that. But I'm just not sure what a kind of a road it leaves us going down if we're changing racetracks to suit one category of car at the expense of all other motorsport that happens around here. I think these cars still do suit this quite well, and the fact that we've got a long slipstreaming section now towards turn 1 might just help us tonight. But even so, I'm not sure where it leaves us, if I'm honest, changing circuits for Formula One like that. But nevertheless, it's brought them Formula 1, so they've got what they wanted, I suppose. Battle for the race lead. Gullickson and Lip very close to one another. And this is the closest we've seen all race. Have a Gullickson under pressure as we get through the end of the middle third. I thought it'd be the middle third where Sebastian Lip puts the most pressure on, but actually it's going to be the final laps of this race. 6 to go at the line, and he's in the slipstream now through this long flat out section of the S's in towards turn 7. He's really close, and this is the closest we've seen this battle for the race lead since this race began 12 laps ago.
Yeah, these two finally within striking distance of each other, looking at that gap fluctuate. If these racers start to battle, though, you got to worry about the other drivers right behind. Andres Friedrich, Sebastian's teammate, may not force this issue too much. Peter Ivany in that number 9 car, he may try and force this issue a decent amount as well. And you look at the likes of Kettle Larson right behind. We have got ourselves a very intriguing battle. You got 2 IGL Coatings drivers at the front and rear of this train in the form of Gullickson and Larson. You got the 2 and their teammates linked up together, and you got Peter Ivan, who's just kind of in the middle, the mediator of all of this chaos, and maybe breaking out here sooner rather than later. If Ivan can close up that gap a little bit, this 3-car battle, which is really 2 at the moment, is really going to get hot.
And he's going to want Friedrich's involvement, is Sebastian Lip, and he might well get it because Gullickson goes on the defensive in towards turn 1. The final third of the race rings in a race-leading battle. Late apex through turn 1. Oh, didn't quite give Lip the run he was looking for. Just a small bobble there as he got going was just enough to keep Gullickson in the lead and invite Andres Friedrich into the now 3-car battle for the race lead.
3 is most certainly company in this battle for the race lead. And how do you got to feel if you're Havard Gullickson? You got Sebastian Lip hounding you as they head their way up the hill into turn number 7, trying to find any way in the book to overtake you. But then you've got Lip's teammate right in tow. I wonder if we're going to find ourselves in a little shake and bake situation with Sebastian Lip and Andres Friedrich, whether or not those 2 Germans are going to try and put a heck of a lot of pressure on Havard Gullickson, your season 1 champion in 2025 here in the Radical Esports Cup. Very good in these cars. Already won at Belle Isle a little bit earlier on this season, and in that race, he didn't really have anybody challenging him. Here, however, if he wants to visit victory lane at Stanford, he has really got to earn it.
Oh, and he's in the gravel there as well. You can get away with it just a little bit through there, but it will hurt your exit coming off of the corner. Luckily, there's another corner coming up very quickly. Turn 13 here. Now, what's the run going to be like from Lip? Is it going to be good enough here? He's immediately going to start to gain in the slipstream. Actually, Friedrich is closer to him than he is to Gullickson, but that might not matter too much. 3 temps, is it close enough as they get 5 laps to go here? There's a battle in the background as well. The race getting a little bit looser now as even he forced to defend from Larson. Lip on the attack from Gullickson. Oh, it's an up and under, it looks like, from Larson, but he can't do it. Even he parks on the apex, and Gullickson keeps the lead as well. Now, does Lip try anything here in the back section? No, he goes on the defensive there, Gullickson. That is highly unusual because it will not give you the run required coming out of the corner, and they're going to be side by side through the really fast S's here. Luckily, it's flat out in these radicals. He's on the outside though, Lip, in time for turn 7, and he has to back out of it. He didn't have the commitment there. Gullickson went wide though, through the middle of the corner, and here he comes at turn 8. Again, he backs out. Tentative Sebastian Lip at the moment. He needs a bit more decisiveness if he's going to take this race lead.
Yeah, Roy, that side-by-side racing as they headed their way up the hill down to turn number 7 is really the only bit of aggression that we've seen from Sebastian Lip so far. He's been keeping a calm, cool, and collected, but here at Zandvoort, as much as you've got a good amount of overtaking opportunities, you've got to be firm. You got to have that a bit of aggression, and you really have to lick the stamp and send it at certain points in time. He's been applying the pressure to the back of Havard Gullickson expertly as of late. We've seen these mistakes pile up for the driver of the number 2 car, but Sebastian Lip just hasn't been able to capitalize on it yet. I wonder if he's going to try and go 2 for 2 and do what he did last time, or whether or not Havard Gullickson will learn his lesson as they head their way out through turn number 3 in a couple of moments. That will be the spot unless Lip can make it move down to turn number 1. He's already closing up.
And he's already alongside with his nose in front into turn 1. This is the conviction he needs outside of turn 1, and he's got it by the looks of things. He's still there as Gullickson, but he has to tuck back into line. He has to think about Friedrich, who's just there as well, because that could be a problem for him. Now, will Friedrich be able to take the better line here and take the place as well? It's a decent covering off job there from Gullickson, and it looks like Friedrich's going to have a hard time coming through here straight away, but he's putting the pressure on now, and he's going to go for it into turn 7. Is he not quite white. Sebastian Lipp leads this race. Gullikson very nearly gets into the back of him, and here comes Friedrich on the attack as a result into turn 8. It's like watching a replay of the previous lap, because on this occasion the Inerti Racing driver backs out of it again, and Sebastian Lipp this time leads the race in front of Gullikson, who's now got 3 laps to respond.
And I'm not sure why Gullikson keeps going for that middle line as he heads his way off through turn number 3. That's not the way to go about that. Granted, you're trying to block off that inside line, but the inside heading off through there, that turn is basically a giant bowl. That is all that you've got at that point of the racetrack, so you can't really make anything work on the inside. If you try and go for a dive off in there, you're more than likely going to spin. So Gullikson blocking off that inside line as much as he's doing off into turn number 3 is hurting him more than it's helping him. And trying to kill a cat, you gave a gun to a bear, and that's what Gullikson's trying to do. He's trying to block off the move into turn number 3, but in the process of that, basically making it seem like his car's being powered with milk or vegetable oil as he heads his way up the hill down to turn number 7.
Yeah, he's really got to stop doing that line through turn 3, because it is killing him a little bit. Or maybe it's just a different way of doing it, I suppose, because he does seem to enter slightly shallower anyway. Didn't seem like much of a defence there to me, but it was just slightly shallower anyway. He's only half a second behind Sebastian Lipp here, and he's got to remember that. He's got to remember he's still in the slipstream, but he keeps getting turn 7 wrong. That's definitely wide. There's no debate about the line through there, and he will lose time doing that line as well. So he's only got a couple of laps to figure this one out now, but we've seen it is possible to overtake here, especially through the first sector. First sector, though, for the penultimate time is coming up next, remember. Not long at all for Gullikson to find his way back past.
So with time running out, I think we're going to see the level of aggression begin to crank up in these battles all around the racetrack, whether it be this battle for the podium and the race win, whether it be the battle between Peter Eveny and Kettle Larson, who have really started to fall off the back of this trio of cars. That's a battle for the final 2 spots inside the top 5, so keep an eye on that as well. Whether it be a battle a little bit farther behind involving Heinz Braun and George Gonzaga, we've got battles all around this racetrack, and it's still going to be intense in the run up to the line. 2 laps left to go here at Zandvoort. I got to wonder who's going to be the next to try and go for a move on anybody. Will Gullikson try and fight back on Lipp? Will Andres Friedrich try and make it an inert team 1-2 here at Zandvoort? Or whether Peter Eveny and Kettle Larson may start to battle. Those two have been running nose to tail for quite some time, and as someone who's gotten the opportunity to cover Kettle Larson for about 2 years now at this point, he's very tame behind the wheel. He's usually not one that's going to throw caution to the wind and go for the outrageous moves. The entirety of that IGL Coatings team is usually a bit more calm, cool, and collected in the way that they like to tackle these races. So look at that battle for 4th to really heat up, as that battle up at the front is still very much on.
It certainly is. And Gullikson is trying all he can now to get back on terms with Sebastian Lipp here and give him a hard time towards the finish. The white flag will be out next time round. There will be one more lap to go, but is Gullikson close enough? 4 tenths is just that little bit too far away when you're coming down in towards turn number 1, at which point you do need to be side by side, really massively over the inside curve, onto the gravel on the inside of 12 as well. He is pushing hard here, is Gullikson, right in front of the arena section there, through that chicane. Now, what's his run like? His exit always was pretty decent out of the final corner, and he might just have a final chance. This is the last time coming into Sector 1, don't forget. It creeps up in you quicker than you think round here. White flag, 1 more lap to go from Zandvoort, and he isn't close enough. Lipp making it clear that he's not going to be fazed by that, and he doesn't even defend on the way towards turn number 1. Here comes Gullikson on the exit. He's nowhere near. This is now in really desperate situations for Gullikson, who has to try and find an unorthodox way past.
You've got 2 drivers as cool as cucumbers running up the front, and they're pretty much trying to psych each other out of this win. You can see that fake out move, the dive attempted heading down into turn number 1. Gullikson tried to get into Sebastian Lipp's head, but he's running out of time to force this driver, the number 7 car, into a mistake, and Gullikson's got to worry. That gap between himself and Andres Friedrich has closed up big time, now about 0.3 of a second as they head their way off through turn number 9. Gullikson has both have to worry about trying to get a move done on Sebastian Lipp, but he's also got to worry about Andres Friedrich right behind. Let's see as they head their way onto the backstretch into the chicane for the final time.
Yeah, Friedrich is really close coming out of turn 10 this time. as they get into the chicane again. He's so late on the brakes there, Gullickson. You've got no chance of getting past him there. But unfortunately, through the final couple of corners, you can't pass Sebastian Lipp either. Unless he makes an error, he's going to win this race as he comes through 13 and 14. Doesn't even kick a wheel onto the gravel. And through the bank final turn, Sebastian Lipp comes. He is going to win in the Radical Esports Cup from Zandvoort. Just a few tenths in front of Havik Gullickson and Andreas Friedrich. It's Sebastian Lipp who wins at Zandvoort. What a fantastic drive from him. And he will be very, very pleased with that. Just a few tenths of a second, the gap at the line. 3 at the line from Gullickson. Friedrich on the podium in third. It's Sebastian Lipp's first top 5 of the season. Never mind in the broadcasted races anyway. Never mind a podium or win. It's his first of those as well. As the last few come over the line, the championship leader of our broadcasted races, Andre Castro, only finishes in 8th for the circuit. He clearly doesn't enjoy too much. And therefore, Gullickson will take our small championship lead as well, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But Sebastian Lipp wins tonight from Havik Gullickson and Andreas Friedrich on the podium. Peter Eveny, 4th position in the end, holding off Cattell Larsen. Lasse Sorensen battled his way through into 6th, with James Barry in 7th on his own, Castro on his own in 8th. Heinz Braun, George Gonzaga rounded out the top 10 of mostly drivers we've seen before actually this season in our broadcasted races. Denis Kyriakopoulos is 11th ahead of Gullickson and Djokovic, who we saw come over the line there battling. Alan Rasmussen ended 1 lap down, Chris Retz retired 9 down halfway through that race. Let's have a chat to one of the protagonists, shall we? Havik Gullickson, who finishes 2nd here tonight at Zandvoort in our broadcasted race. Havik, welcome in. Good to have you with us. 2nd place in the end after that battle with Sebastian Lipp. Was there anything else you could have done, do you feel, to have kept him behind or indeed got back past him again in those late laps?
Yeah, if I would race a bit quicker, I could get him, but it's very difficult. If you're trying to push on this track, the tires get really hot and you have no steering and no traction out of the corners. So yeah, I tried to manage when I was leading, but yeah, I didn't get enough of a lead to hold on. But yeah, I'm happy with P2 and congrats to Sebastian with the first place.
In some corners anyway, you were taking a couple of different lines between the two of you, in especially turn 3 it was noticeable, turn 7 as well it was noticeable as well. What's your likeness of this circuit? How much do you like it? And what was have you sort of had to do a bit of a learning process of what you find comfortable around this circuit? Because it was noticeable how you were slightly different to the two, both ahead and in front, ahead and behind you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do different things and trying to find the grip. I tried this track first time early in this week, and I did a 28.7 on the first try, on the first practice, and I just struggled to get quicker. But yeah, I'm pretty consistent, and yeah, just trying to find grip and not push too much.
Well, congratulations on a 2nd place finish tonight. Shame it wasn't the win, but you were very, very close indeed. And thanks for coming to chat to us as well at the end of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. That's Havik Gullickson chatting to us at the end tonight from Zandvoort. I will just say, by the way, in our broadcasted split standings, it's gotten even closer. In the races that we've seen, the 6 races that we've seen so far, Havik Gullickson will now be the series leader by just a point over Andreas Friedrich, with Andre Castro only 4 points back. It's very much turning into a 3-horse race, but it was a 3-horse race of a different kind tonight, Ron. In the end, Sebastian Lipp just about too quick for Gullickson, as he said there. There wasn't too much tactically, he felt anyway, that he could have done any different. Sebastian Lipp just had too much speed for him.
Yeah, it felt like Havik Gullickson was really delaying the inevitable at certain points. Sebastian Lipp, he tried to get that lead for so long in this race, eventually made it stick to bring Inert Racing back into victory lane for the first time since week 3 at Imola, when James Barry was able to get the job done. Inert looking to have a slightly more dominant second half of the season. And speaking of that second half of the season, we have got so many absolutely amazing racetracks to look forward to. And next week in Mid-Ohio, going to be an odd one at that Odyssey of a racetrack, the only one I think from this calendar that I've actually been to in real life. I adore Mid-Ohio. It's old school, it's technical, it's super fun, and the drafting game may be strong heading down into turn number 3. But Mid-Ohio next time out on Halloween, going to be a rather spooky night for these racers.
I'm glad I'm doing this instead of anything Halloween related, because I hate it. So there we go. Come and join us instead on the 31st of October.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Don't much like that either. 2100 GMT for us then. As I say, especially if you're in Europe, your clocks are likely changing at the weekend. So do watch out for the start time of that broadcast. It's probably an hour earlier than it has been for the rest of this season, and that's how it will stay over the winter. Big thanks to everyone who's been tuned in tonight. As always, I've been Leary alongside Ron Miles with Ramiro Augustin Cisneros behind the cameras of this RaceSpotTV broadcasting live on YouTube, Twitch, on the RaceSpot and iRacing channels. We hope to see you again in 1 week's time from Mid-Ohio in round 7 of the Radical Esports Cup. But from all of us, until then, it's goodbye.